On today's episode, I sit down with Sybylla, who also has otosclerosis and had the successful stapedectomy surgery. So I can't wait for you to hear about her experience. Let's get to it. Hi, Sybylla. Thank you so much for joining me on an episode of Hear Me Out.
Hello. Happy to be here. Happy to
Hey,
be here.
amazing. So let's start with your connection to the hearing loss world and your diagnosis within that.
Um, well, I had hearing loss significantly for a pretty long time before I got diagnosed. And I was kind of like a punk kid. I went to a lot of shows and like rocked out to really loud music, and I thought that I'd kind of like damaged my hearing um from that, like
Right.
I worked in nightclubs and stuff, and I was just around a lot of loud music for many, many years. And it took it getting pretty bad for me to actually seek a diagnosis and just get it checked. And by the time I actually got my hearing checked and learned how bad my hearing truly was, I was like at about 70% hearing
I
loss. And I just learned to live with it gradually over about 10 years or so,
Wow.
but maybe even longer. But 10 years before my diagnosis was kind of around the time people started saying things to me, missing parts of conversations, like responding in a weird way. And so I got my diagnosis, and it kind of took me, um, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to talk about surgery now? I feel like
Yeah,
I
the
could
Otis.
talk all
Yeah.
day. Like, I don't know, but
So how long after you were diagnosed with otosclerosis, though, did you decide you wanted to go the surgery route?
um, well, it kind of took a series of navigating doctors and insurance things. Like, it kind of took me a minute to really even figure out, yeah, I don't know, a lot of things. And sorry, it's so complicated. I'm like, ah. But probably I think I had my surgeries like 2 years after I got diagnosed. And I kind of started just talking to some doctors, exploring what that would look like for me. And I was a little bit hesitant at first because, just honestly, the reality of learning how bad my hearing really was sort of hard to accept. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just learned how to live with it pretty well, like I had so many little tricks I was doing that I didn't even realize I was doing.
Totally. I totally feel that. I mean, I call it a grieving process because when I got my diagnosis,
Definitely.
I got my hearing aid probably 3 months after, but I didn't wear it. I probably a solid year and a half was stubborn, didn't accept
Uh,
it, grieved the whole process. And then, like you said, you come up with these little tips and tricks to fake it almost, and you get enough out of conversations and kind of trick yourself.
yeah, and I was like really proud of how well I was doing in spite of such a setback. And I had kind of become like really particular about a lot of things and just really attached to this weird way of dealing with it. But I had a talk with myself, and I just knew that if there was a chance I could do something about it and I didn't try, I knew I would regret not trying. So I started to kind of talk to some doctors and explore what that would look like. And yeah, I don't know. It turned out that I was like, a pretty good candidate for the surgery. I've kind of learned since then from talking to some other people that like not, it can manifest in a lot of different ways, which I didn't really realize. And luckily mine like was what was going on was a
Right.
good candidate for the surgery. And
Yeah, that's this.
at the
Sorry,
same
go ahead.
time, though, pandemic happened, and I think the intersection of exploring it and suddenly everyone is masked and distancing, and I realized how much, as I'm sure everyone who is going to watch this can relate, like I didn't know how much I read facial expressions and lip reading and just like a mask really really drastically changed whatever bits of sound I was able to pick up, and I suddenly just not communicating at all.
That's totally fair. I think the masks actually, for a lot of people I've spoken to, kind of pushed them to do something about their hearing. So as much as it was kind of like a difficult time, it also put in perspective to a lot of people like, hey, I should probably do something about this. This is something I need to take seriously.
Yeah.
And yeah. So did you get offered hearing aids going that route, or was it always like suggested
So
surgery?
so my insurance would pay for like surgery or hearing aids.
Okay.
So I knew I wanted to get surgery, and it took me like probably honestly like a year and a half of trying to kind of navigate the system and like my weird insurance, and like there were some things that weren't clear about my particular insurance, and I ended up going to like, I live in Portland, Oregon, and I met with almost every person who performs that surgery in this area, and finally ended up landing with the most amazing surgeon. Her name is Yale Ross, and she's at OHSU. If anyone watching this happens to be in
Amazing.
that area, she is wonderful and amazing. And I feel like she was just like the person I was meant to do this with because I was nervous. But
Oh, that's awesome.
it took a pretty long time to navigate, getting to that moment. And so my husband, who is like a technical gadget kind of guy, um, he figured out that there's a way that you can kind of hack the AirPod Pros to
Ooh,
be a hearing aid.
cool.
Yeah, and he like figured it out for me, and there's a way you can do a little hearing test like on your phone to adjust where it needs to be. And I can't remember what it is. I can email to you because there may be curious parties. But I wore my AirPods as hearing aids
Okay.
that whole time waiting for my surgery, and it was such a lifeline. It was kind of amazing, just like walking around in the crunchy fall leaves and stuff. Like there were a lot of, they were very helpful to me.
That's
So
awesome.
I kind of had hearing aids.
That's neat though. That's a really cool way to like adapt to your needs, the resources you have. So that's really awesome. And with your surgery, what was the recovery like? Like how I know a lot of people ask what the recovery like, how soon did you have your hearing restored? Like what that all felt like.
So I had done a lot of reading, and what I was prepared for was like, I had read that your hearing would get a little worse and then get better, like maybe 3 or 4 months after. And at that point, you'd be at like your peak, like what you get from the surgery. But for
Right.
me, it was immediate. Like,
Wow.
I, woke up after surgery and I was all foggy from anesthesia and I didn't really realize, but I could hear the nurses, I could hear my husband. I wasn't asking anyone to repeat themselves. And then
Right.
when we got home, I kind of just slept for a while. And when I woke up, my husband was like making me like a soup, and there were like all the, I like woke up and was like, what is happening in this house? You know, like I could hear the faucet and this like kitchen fan and all these like ambient house sounds, like the refrigerator was so loud. I was like, we're gonna need a new refrigerator. This will not do. But it was like an immediate, very strong. It was honestly really overwhelming, and I kind of wanted to like hide out a little bit, and I was kind of like a you know, little baby bird experiencing the world for the first time. Like there were a
That
lot,
would be really overwhelming.
it
But I
was
mean,
like
I can't imagine.
it was like I mean it was wonderful and the best, but also really overwhelming. Like you made a post recently about going to the grocery store. And going to the grocery store, I was like, no. But it since then it's leveled out a lot and I'm a
That's
lot
good.
less sensitive. And I just did, they do one ear at a time to kind
Okay.
of, I mean, my hearing loss was both sides. So is that bilateral? Is that what that?
Yes.
I was like, my left ear was a little bit worse, so they did that ear first to kind of see how you do, and then I got the other one like maybe 6 or 8 months later.
That's
So
amazing. That's
yeah,
always
so
so wonderful to hear about successful stories because I know that it's not always the case. And that's one of the things that holds me back from getting the surgery.
oh,
And why
too.
I'm just grateful for my hearing aids and I'm good with them because I'm just so worried about the outcome.
I know, like it was a really hard choice for me to make, but you know, like for me, I have a little saying with myself where whenever I'm kind of like stressing out or doubting things, I try to remind myself that there's always the possibility things might turn out better than you think they will.
That is such a good way to think of
So
things, though. Optimism
yeah.
is very important in so many ways.
Yeah.
So many ways. So
Yeah.
is your hearing fully restored? Like you were at 70% loss. What did the surgery bring you back to?
Um, you know, I don't remember the actual number, but it's fully within the normal range now.
That's amazing. That is so fantastic. I'm so happy for you. That's just wonderful to hear. And it's so important, like you mentioned, you did all this research. And I think that's the key thing people need to do is don't just go with the first option you hear. Look around, shop around, like hear different people's, options.
And you know, I will say too that a lot of the information I read on the internet about how the surgery is performed, when I asked my surgeon about it, she was like, what? Like, I mean, I could get into weird, tiny specifics of what goes on in that tiny world, but like, she was like, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago that was a thing. So I think that like there are current, like if it's something anyone is considering, I think that there are like current methods that you can't really read about unless you're maybe reading like current medical journals or something. So
Right.
I
Well,
would
that's a
suggest
good way to know too, because the
that.
internet, like knowledge is power, but like the internet is so overwhelming that too much information is also not the best, especially if it's information that's not up to date, can make
Yeah.
things worse.
Well, and I think too, people are more likely to share a bad experience than they are to share a good experience. Because if you have a good experience, you're just kind of going about your life, you know,
True.
and you don't really hear those stories as much. So that's one reason I wanted to talk to you today. But
Yes, I'm so glad you wanted to
you
join me on this because there's so many people that continuously ask me like, are you doing the surgery? Are you going this way? Who can I talk to? So it's really great to have resources like yourself for people to reach out to if they want to talk about surgery because it's so great to hear personal experiences and sharing the doctor you went to. I think that's so important for people to know about as well. And if people have the resources, maybe they can fly out to see like these doctors that have had really great success rates. Um, That's
Yeah, and,
awesome.
if anyone wants to reach out to me, like I would love to talk to anyone about it. So
So nice. And before we go, I want to talk about your pottery because it's absolutely stunning right behind you. So is this your full-time job? Is it a hobby? Like, how did you get into this? It's so beautiful.
well, it's honestly part of my hearing loss story, kind of. So what before my surgeries, as probably a lot of people can relate to, I wasn't really thrilled about taking classes. um because I'd had so many awkward experiences, like even in like a yoga class,
Right.
just not hearing, or, I never knew if the acoustics of a room were gonna just happen to really not work for my hearing, or maybe the instructor would be like a man with like a deep voice that I just would not be able to hear. And I kind of just started shying away from such things. So when I got my hearing back, I took a class. I was just like, I'm gonna take some classes. I'm gonna take this pottery class. And like day one of this class, I kind of realized like, I think I was put on this planet to make ceramics. And like I've been a, wedding cake decorator, and my dad was a really amazing potter, and I kind of always thought of it as like his thing. But when I took um some classes, I realized I soaked up so much information, and it just happened to come really naturally to me and be, this really like perfect moment of intersecting like a new era after my surgery. So
Love
um
that.
kind of just decided to go for it, and we like got all this equipment, and our whole basement is a pottery studio now, and um I'm just doing it full time. I
That's
don't
amazing. I love how that
know.
came full circle for you. Like something, I mean, getting a hearing loss diagnosis is very overwhelming, and to me it was like heartbreaking. But then you've come full circle. You've taken something, I don't want to call it negative, but like something, and you've turned it into this beautiful, it led you to like what you were meant to do. So that's so
Yeah,
wonderful.
and I do just want to say, that even though I had that experience and started something new after my surgery, um, I there are a lot of things like secret superpower life skills that I gained during my time of being in the hearing loss, like kind of the
Right.
ability to sort of like shut out the kind of static and just like focus on something. It really helped me like tap into my like intuition and just my creative inner world. And I'm really, really grateful to the otosclerosis for that gift. And, I realized all the things that I've kind of tried and the ways that my life has changed after surgery. Something I think about a lot is that I did have all of this within me the whole time. And
Okay.
like, if anyone is like not trying to have surgery, like that's okay too. You
Yeah,
can still try new things, and
absolutely.
think about that a lot.
That's so wonderful though that you mentioned that because there like your perspective changes so much when you go through hearing loss and like your own journey and things. So it's just amazing that you've tapped into those and now they've almost been like brought to life in a different way. And
Mhm.
it's part of life's journey. Like that's just really powerful.
Yeah.
Like yeah. Like no, I when I hear people's stories and I love hearing the positives and the different perspectives that have come from it because it's a hard journey and like there are a lot of bad days and things like that, but when you can tap into those like positive lights, like it really does shift your whole like perspective and mindset on a whole lot of things, not just like your hearing ability, but just the world around you.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much more that I could say about that, but like it has definitely made me like a stronger human to have been through that. And I, in a weird way, am very grateful for all the lessons and strengths that I have gained from being
Wow.
on that
Everything happens
journey.
for
I
a
don't
reason, you know, like as
know.
cliche as that sounds, like it really does. Like everything happens for a reason. So that's just, thank you for sharing your story. And before we go, where can people find your beautiful ceramics?
Oh yeah, well, I have on the Instagram, I'm Sybylla Ceramic, and then I have a website which is just sybyillaceramic.com.
Amazing. I will make sure to include that below for all of our wonderful viewers to check out because they are absolutely stunning. So thank you again for joining me on Hear Me Out. And
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful to chat with you.